Rain pounded against the concrete as Callum Beckett, the 34-year-old heir to the Beckett fortune, curled against a brick wall in a narrow Manhattan alley. His custom Brioni tuxedo, now soaked and mud-stained, clung to his trembling frame. The man who commanded a global real estate empire and made financial markets move with a single decision was now reduced to muffled sobs, his shoulders heaving as he pressed his face into his hands. What force on earth could demolish a man who had everything? What catastrophe could bring the CEO of Beckett Holdings, a man whose family dynasty and personal investments exceeded the GDP of small nations, to his knees in a filthy alleyway? Have you ever witnessed someone at their absolute lowest point? That moment when all their defenses crumble and raw humanity breaks through. Would you walk past, pretending not to notice? Or would you stop, despite the rain, despite your own problems, despite being late for work? Today's story will change how you answer that question forever. One woman made a choice that morning. A choice that seemed insignificant in the moment but would alter two lives irrevocably. If you've ever felt completely abandoned when you needed someone most, hit that like button right now. Stay with me to discover how this moment of raw vulnerability changed two lives forever. A billionaire left at the altar, and the ordinary woman who showed him genuine compassion when the rest of the world was busy capturing his downfall. St. Patrick's Cathedral stood majestic that morning, its grand interior transformed for what the business press had dubbed the wedding of the decade. 500 of society's most powerful figures filled the pews: CEOs, politicians, celebrities, and royalty. The guest list alone represented trillions in combined wealth. Outside, a media encampment broadcast live to millions worldwide, with commentators discussing the merger of visionary minds between the Beckett dynasty and the Whitmore media empire. The cathedral dripped with imported white orchids and rare blue roses, a color scheme that matched Eleanor Whitmore's family crest. A string quartet played as distinguished guests arrived in procession. The scene was meticulously arranged, down to the hand-calligraphed seating cards and custom-blended fragrance wafting through the air. Callum stood at the altar, confident and commanding. The wedding planner's earpiece crackled. Bride is prepping final touches. 2 minutes to processional. But those 2 minutes stretched into 5. Then 10. The music looped awkwardly as whispers rippled through the crowd. At 15 minutes, Callum's best man received a text. His face fell as he leaned toward Callum, whispering something that drained the color from the groom's face. Eleanor was gone. In the bridal suite, her $400,000 Marchesa gown hung untouched. On the vanity mirror, a folded note in Eleanor's handwriting contained just 3 devastating words: irreconcilable differences exist. No explanation, no apology, just absence. The live broadcast captured everything: the hushed conversations, the confused guests, the panic among wedding staff. Commentators who moments earlier praised the couple's perfect partnership now speculated wildly about what went wrong. Hashtags trended within minutes: billionaire jilted runaway bride, Beckett humiliation. On the trading floor, Beckett Holdings stock plummeted. By noon, share values had dropped 12%, wiping billions from the company's market cap. Board members called emergency meetings. Investors demanded statements. Business rivals quietly celebrated. As chaos erupted around him, Callum maintained rigid composure, addressing guests with practiced poise. Today's ceremony will not proceed. Please accept my apologies. His voice never wavered, his expression revealed nothing. But when the cathedral emptied and cameras pressed closer, something broke. He bolted through a side exit, security struggling to create a path. Photographers pursued relentlessly, capturing his increasingly frantic retreat through Manhattan streets. The dignified CEO facade cracked with each block until he finally disappeared down an unmarked alley where the cameras couldn't follow, but where one person would. The financial newspapers would document the economic impact. Gossip columns would speculate about Eleanor's motives, but none captured what truly happened in that alley, the moment a human being, not just a billionaire, collapsed under unbearable public shame. Can you imagine having your most painful moment broadcast worldwide, your heartbreak dissected on social media, your tears converted to memes? Comment below if you think privacy is even possible for public figures in today's digital age. Aubrey Hayes rushed through the downpour, coffee-stained messenger bag clutched against her chest. At 28, her life was a constant race against time. Freelance graphic design projects during the day, barista shifts at a Brooklyn cafe by night. That morning she'd lost a major client. That evening she was already 20 minutes late for her shift. She nearly missed him, the crumpled figure in the expensive suit, partially hidden behind a dumpster. Most New Yorkers hurried past, faces buried in phones or shielded by umbrellas. Rain washed through the concrete canyon of tall buildings, creating a curtain between pedestrians and their surroundings. Aubrey paused. Something about the man's posture, completely defeated, shoulders convulsing with silent sobs, cut through her rush. Her mother's voice echoed, "We help because we're human, not because they deserve it." Her decision was automatic rather than calculated. Aubrey knelt beside him, her own clothes immediately soaking through at the knees. "Hey," she said softly. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" When he looked up, his face was raw with grief, eyes bloodshot. He didn't speak, couldn't seem to form words. Without thinking, Aubrey opened her arms. The man, this complete stranger in clothes that probably cost more than her annual rent, collapsed into her embrace. They stayed like that for minutes, rain drumming around them. She simply held him, one human being comforting another. No questions, no judgment, no smartphones recording the moment for social media fame. Later, when interviewed about the encounter, Aubrey would say only, "I didn't know who he was, just a person in pain. Anyone would have done the same." But they hadn't. Dozens had walked past. Aubrey alone had stopped. What would you have done? Walk by, assuming it wasn't your problem? Or stop, risking rejection, ridicule, even potential danger? Her split-second decision altered both their destinies forever, a moment of compassion that would eventually transform two lives completely. If you believe small acts of kindness can change lives, subscribe now and hit that bell to experience more extraordinary stories that prove compassion still exists in our world. These moments happen every day, most without cameras or recognition, ordinary people choosing connection over indifference. Few knew the truth about Callum Beckett's early years. The public knew only the polished narrative, heir to the Beckett fortune, Harvard Business School, ruthless expansion of his family's already substantial holdings. What remained hidden was the infant left at Boston General Hospital, with no identification. Adopted at 6 months by Margaret and William Beckett, after they failed to conceive. The adoption records remained sealed, the story buried by expensive PR firms. But those childhood wounds, the primal fear of being unwanted, discarded, shaped Callum's every decision. His relentless acquisition of wealth and power functioned as armor against that core insecurity. "I built a life no one could walk away from," he once confided to his therapist. His relationship with Eleanor Whitmore had never been about love. Their engagement represented a calculated alliance between two dynasties, her family's media conglomerate complementing his real estate empire. The prenuptial agreement ran 76 pages. Their wedding plans included strategy meetings and stockholder presentations. When she abandoned him, she didn't just reject him personally, she demolished the carefully constructed facade he'd built to protect himself from exactly this kind of abandonment. Aubrey's life existed in stark contrast. Raised in Pittsburgh by a single mother who worked factory shifts, she'd clawed her way through art school on scholarships and student loans that still consumed a third of her monthly income. Her mother's Parkinson's diagnosis 3 years ago had added caregiving responsibilities and medical bills to her already precarious finances. The client she'd lost that morning represented 40% of her income, a crisis that would force difficult decisions about her mother's care facility. Two people from different worlds, yet both intimately acquainted with vulnerability, both experts at masking pain, both reaching breaking points on the same rain-soaked morning. 3 days after their encounter, a private investigator appeared at Aubrey's apartment door. Callum wanted to meet her, wanted to express gratitude. A check for $50,000 was offered for your time and discretion. Aubrey returned the check unopened, but she did agree to coffee. They met at a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from paparazzi haunts. What was scheduled for 30 minutes stretched to 4 hours. Callum spoke of his adoption for the first time in years. Aubrey shared her fears about her mother's progressing illness. Neither performed the roles they typically played for others. No CEO authority, no cheerful resilience. Just honest conversation. "You're the first person who's seen me at my worst and didn't use it against me," Callum told her. "And you're the first person who's listened about my mom without offering empty solutions," she replied. That coffee meeting became the foundation for something neither had experienced before, a connection based on authenticity rather than utility or expectation. Have you ever formed an unexpected bond with someone completely different from you? Someone from another social circle, economic background, or life experience? What bridged that gap between your worlds? Was it a shared struggle, a moment of vulnerability, or something else entirely? Share your experience below. A lone photographer, trailing behind the main press pack, had captured what would become the defining image of that day, a bedraggled billionaire being comforted by an unknown woman in a rain-soaked alley. Within hours, the photo appeared across every major news outlet worldwide. Ali Angel began trending immediately. Internet sleuths identified Aubrey within 24 hours. Her social media accounts gained hundreds of thousands of followers overnight. Memes proliferated. "Be someone's Ali Angel" captioned over the image, "Looking for someone who holds me like she held Callum Beckett." Morning shows debated the significance of the moment. Was it staged? A genuine human connection? The beginning of a modern fairy tale? At Beckett Holdings headquarters, crisis management teams worked around the clock. PR head Lila Torres presented an ambitious strategy to the board. "We can reframe this as authentic leadership, a CEO who's not afraid to show humanity." Marketing teams drafted campaigns highlighting emotional intelligence as a corporate value. But Callum refused to participate, sending a blunt email, "My breakdown is not a branding opportunity." Eleanor's camp launched a counter-narrative through carefully placed insider sources. Articles appeared describing Callum as emotionally vacant, obsessed with work, and incapable of genuine intimacy. Friends quoted anonymously painted him as controlling and distant. The message was clear: she hadn't abandoned him, she'd escaped him. Meanwhile, brands rushed to capitalize on the moment. Clothing companies released Ali Angel raincoats. Coffee shops offered compassion lattes. A greeting card company used a silhouette resembling the famous photo with the tagline, "Be there when it matters." Through it all, Aubrey declined interviews and sponsorship offers. When cornered by reporters outside her apartment, she said only, "Please stop calling me an angel. I just did what anyone should do." That's not heroism, it's basic humanity. What does it reveal about our society when basic human compassion becomes headline news? When we're so shocked by a simple act of kindness that we turn it into entertainment? Have we collectively forgotten how to simply be there for each other? When did comforting someone in pain become exceptional rather than expected? In the weeks that followed their coffee meeting, Callum and Aubrey created a connection that defied social expectations. They moved cautiously at first, text messages about their days, occasional phone calls that stretched into the early morning hours. Neither rushed nor labeled what was forming between them. Away from cameras and expectations, they discovered shared interests. Both loved obscure documentaries and spicy Thai food. Both felt most at peace near water. Both carried wounds they rarely showed others. In therapy, Callum had a breakthrough about his attraction to Aubrey. With Eleanor, every interaction felt transactional, he told his therapist. With Aubrey, there's no agenda. No family expecting a merger, no board analyzing our relationship's market impact. She doesn't need anything from me, except honesty. For Aubrey, the revelation came gradually. The man I met in that alley isn't the person in those magazine profiles, she told her friend Mia. He's thoughtful, sometimes awkward, deeply loyal to the few people he trusts. The public only sees the armor, not who it protects. Their time together centered on authentic moments, late-night conversations at 24-hour diners where no one recognized them, walks through quiet Brooklyn neighborhoods, afternoons at her mother's care facility where Callum read poetry to the residents, mornings at his family's beach house where Aubrey sketched the sunrise. The contrast with Callum's previous relationships was stark. His dating history consisted of strategic matches approved by family advisors, relationships maintained through assistants who scheduled dinners and purchased appropriate gifts. With Aubrey, he bought groceries and cooked messy, imperfect meals. He chose flowers himself, learning through trial and error which ones she preferred. For Aubrey, whose previous boyfriends had either resented her caregiving responsibilities or tried to rescue her from them, Callum's approach was refreshingly different. He didn't try to solve her problems, he simply stood beside her through them. Healing happened in unexpected moments. When Aubrey received another rejection from a potential client, Callum didn't offer connections or money. He listened to her frustration without diminishing it. When Callum woke from nightmares about abandonment, Aubrey didn't offer platitudes, she held his hand until morning. This journey is just beginning. Hit that bell icon right now to discover what happens when worlds truly collide and conventional barriers between people dissolve through genuine connection. Do you believe people from entirely different backgrounds can truly understand each other? Or are some differences too vast to bridge? What's been your experience connecting with someone whose life seemed completely different from yours? Share your thoughts below. 6 months into their relationship, disaster struck Beckett Holdings. A major international development project collapsed when government officials in Dubai revoked crucial permits, citing ethical concerns after leaked documents suggested bribery by a Beckett executive. The company's stock plummeted 28% in a single day as investor confidence shattered. Callum vanished into crisis mode. His transformation was immediate. The vulnerable, authentic man Aubrey had come to know disappeared behind the CEO persona. 20-hour workdays became his norm. Meals consisted of coffee and protein bars. Sleep happened on the office couch, if at all. Text responses dwindled to one-word replies. Planned dinners were cancelled with brief apologies. When they did see each other, Callum was physically present but mentally elsewhere, constantly checking his phone, making notes, taking calls. Meanwhile, Aubrey faced her own crossroads. A prestigious design firm in San Francisco offered her a creative director position, triple her current income, full benefits including family medical coverage that would significantly improve her mother's care options. But accepting meant leaving New York. Leaving Callum. After 3 weeks of Callum's effective absence, Aubrey confronted him at his penthouse office. The conversation quickly escalated. "I understand this crisis is important," she said. "But I'm starting to feel like I only get access to the real you when everything's perfect. The moment things get hard, you revert to being the untouchable CEO." "That's not fair," Callum countered. "My company is fighting for survival. Thousands of jobs are at stake." I know. But I'm tired of being your escape from reality. I can't just be the person you come to when you need a break from your real life. I need to be part of your real life." The argument exposed raw nerves on both sides. Callum's abandonment fears surfaced. "You're leaving because I'm not giving you enough attention, just like everyone else." Aubrey's insecurities flared. "You'll always choose your company over any relationship." They parted without resolution, both hurt and defensive. 5 days passed without contact, the longest silence since they'd met. Aubrey began packing for San Francisco. Callum buried himself deeper in work. The turning point came during an emergency board meeting. As executives debated laying off 30% of staff to appease shareholders, Callum found himself staring at a framed photo on his desk, Aubrey laughing during a weekend at the beach house. In that moment, clarity hit him. He was making the same mistake that had defined his life before her. Hiding behind work, using crisis as an excuse to avoid emotional risk. Have you ever faced a choice between pursuing a relationship and your personal growth? When career and love pulled you in opposite directions, what did you decide? And looking back now, would you make the same choice again? Callum walked into the packed press conference the next morning without notes. Journalists expected an announcement about layoffs or restructuring. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. "Beckett Holdings has fostered a toxic culture that I personally encouraged," he began. "We've glorified exhaustion, celebrated missed family dinners, and rewarded those who sacrifice their well-being for quarterly profits. Today, that changes." Cameras flashed as he outlined a comprehensive overhaul: mandatory vacation time, expanded mental health benefits, flexible work arrangements. "Our company will no longer measure dedication by hours worked, but by balanced contributions. I've learned, personally and painfully, that success built on burnout isn't sustainable." Financial analysts predicted disaster. Board members threatened resignation. But Callum remained firm. "I'm building a company I would want my children to work for." That evening he appeared at Aubrey's apartment, finding boxes half-packed for San Francisco. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began quietly. "You were right. I've been using work to avoid vulnerability. When things got difficult, I retreated to the role I know best." Aubrey listened, then shared her own realization. "I need to build my career, but running to San Francisco was partly me protecting myself too, leaving before you could disappoint me." Their conversation lasted until sunrise. No accusations, just honest expression of fears and needs. Aubrey decided to decline the San Francisco position but negotiate remote work with a New York design firm, maintaining her independence while staying. Callum committed to regular therapy and firm boundaries between work and personal life. "I don't want to be your escape from reality," Aubrey said. "I want to be your partner in facing reality." "And I don't want to be rescued," Callum replied. "I want to grow alongside you." 3 months later, after consistent change on both sides, Callum proposed during a quiet evening at home. No elaborate production, no media presence, just two people choosing each other deliberately. The ring was her grandmother's, restored rather than replaced with something more expensive. "What's the most meaningful apology you've ever received?" Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but words that showed genuine understanding of how you were hurt. Why did that apology succeed when others failed? What made you believe the person truly understood and would change? 1 year after their alley encounter, Callum and Aubrey exchanged vows beneath an oak tree in Brooklyn's Prospect Park. No cathedral grandeur, no celebrity guest list, just 20 people who genuinely knew and loved them. Folding chairs replaced gilded pews. Wildflowers substituted for imported blooms. The stark contrast to Callum's previous almost wedding couldn't have been more profound. Margaret Beckett, Callum's adoptive mother, officiated the ceremony, a healing choice that acknowledged his roots and the family who had chosen him. During the ceremony, she spoke movingly about how love is both a choice and a commitment renewed daily. Their vows, written together over many evenings, contained no promises of perfection. Instead, they pledged growth, patience, and honest communication. "I promise to see you completely, your strengths and struggles, and choose you every day, especially when it's difficult," Aubrey vowed. "I promise to build a life where we both flourish, not just survive," Callum responded. Media outlets initially criticized the simplicity. "Billionaire opts for budget wedding," read one headline. But as photos leaked and the story emerged, the narrative shifted. Business publications praised their authenticity. Relationship experts highlighted their healthy approach to commitment. Fashion magazines celebrated Aubrey's vintage dress, altered by her own hand. Their honeymoon reflected their new shared values, splitting time between a sustainable development conference in Costa Rica, where Callum was implementing his company's new ethical investment strategy, and a community art project Aubrey had designed for local children. Work and love, integrated rather than competing. If this journey from heartbreak to authentic love inspires you, share this video with someone who needs to hear that genuine connection is possible, even after devastating disappointment. Sometimes our lowest moments prepare us for our greatest joys. 3 years after that rain-soaked encounter, Callum and Aubrey continue building a life that honors both their differences and shared values. He still oversees the Beckett empire, but with transformed priorities. Board meetings now schedule around family dinners, not the other way around. She established her own design agency focused on non-profit clients, refusing his financial backing to maintain her independence. Beckett Holdings underwent a transformation mirroring its CEO's personal evolution. The company's radical commitment to employee well-being initially alarmed shareholders, but results proved compelling. Productivity increased 23%, turnover decreased 40%. Business schools now study their model of sustainable success and human-centered leadership. Aubrey found her greatest fulfillment in creating bridges between worlds that rarely connect. Her non-profit initiative pairs design students from working-class backgrounds with corporate mentors, creating pathways typically blocked by privilege and connection. "Talent exists everywhere, opportunity doesn't," became her guiding principle. Their story created ripples throughout their social circles. Eleanor Whitmore, Callum's runway bride, later admitted in an interview that watching their authentic relationship made her reconsider her own approach to connection. Several of Callum's executive friends stepped back from their all-consuming careers after witnessing his transformation and subsequent happiness. Their journey offers powerful lessons for everyone, regardless of wealth or status. First, genuine vulnerability creates strength, not weakness. Callum's willingness to acknowledge his pain, both in that alley and later in rebuilding his company, unlocked his most profound growth. When we hide our wounded places, we prevent them from healing. Second, authentic connection transcends social barriers. Despite vastly different backgrounds, Aubrey and Callum found understanding through shared humanity rather than shared circumstances. Their relationship proves that empathy bridges divides that money and status create. Third, true redemption comes through growth, not image management. Callum could have hired PR teams to rebuild his reputation after being abandoned at the altar. Instead, he chose the harder path of becoming a better person, not just appearing to be one. Finally, small acts of kindness can alter the course of lives forever. Had Aubrey walked past that alley, both their futures would have unfolded completely differently. Never underestimate how your compassion might transform someone's story. So the next time you see another person in pain, even a complete stranger, remember this story. Your decision to stop or continue walking might change not only their life but yours as well. If this story touched your heart, make sure you're subscribed to Extraordinary Stories HQ. Leave a comment sharing which life lesson resonated most with you, and I'll see you in our next extraordinary journey into the power of human connection.